Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Looking Forward to It. I'm Tony Garso, and we're here live in Final Fantasy XIV's Idleshire for another thrilling episode where we're going to discuss Patch 3.2, The Gears of Change. I'm with Erren Van Dyne.
Hello.
And Michael Damiani.
Hey, everyone.
And so we're going to start things off. Patch 3.2 released on February 23rd, and it's been almost 2 weeks. A couple more days and it'll be almost 2 weeks, but I want to ask, what's the first thing you guys did when patch went live? And I guess Erren, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So the first thing I did, and I have to think about this because I woke up really early that day to get on. I think the first thing I did was I unlocked Alexander Midas, the new high-end raid, and I decided to go in there, and I spent a ton of time going in there just to get the normal mode out of the way before raid. And I also did Sephiroth really early.
How about you, Mike?
The first thing I did was not go into either of those, but decided to go into Bismarck and try and get one of these. One of these awesome new mounts. That's what I did for about the first 2 hours of Heavensward, was to make a Bismarck farming party to try and get the mount. And then someone in our FC, Scything Moon, who's actually an officer, got one like on the third or fourth clear. So our FC, I believe, had like the server first new mount. Because, you know, I'm all about getting the mounts in this game. But after that, I did do the same thing as Erren. I went into Midas Normal with my group, and then we tried out Sephiroth Extreme.
Yeah, so I guess like the first thing I did is I unlocked Sephiroth right away, and this time like the new trial or primal trial, it's not attached to the main scenario, so I kind of wanted to unlock that first because I kind of have a thing for those. Like, I really enjoy those fights. But I suppose we'll start off with the main scenario, since that's usually the first thing that people are willing to unlock. So what do you guys think of the new chapter? And we're going full spoiler mode here, so get ready.
I thought it was pretty good, and actually I took a little time before going into it, and you know, I tried to avoid spoilers as best as I could at the time, but I think they definitely improved on 3.1's main scenario content. There was a little more story progression, a little more twists and turns, and kind of hints toward where they're going in the future, so I liked it. And the only thing that I didn't like was, and I don't know if it was just my version of it or whatever, but there were, like, when I finished everything in all the main story, usually at the end there's like little teases, like text teases for the next patch, and there wasn't any of that this time, so I'm not sure if that was a mistake or what.
Yeah, it kind of left you a little bit dry after this one, although like the story itself was quite interesting. Although
Yeah.
we did get a little bit more of that little scenario with Ida and Papalymo. We did get that, and there is someone who does appear, and I have butterflies in my stomach thinking about who that is because I don't want it to be that person, because I don't want Erren to...
I really wanted to be that person, though.
Oh boy. Well, we'll have to see. You know, I mean, it could be someone entirely different. It could be Hildebrand's uncle or something.
I don't think so.
So Mike, I gotta ask you. You didn't skip the story this time, did you?
No, I didn't, except for half of one cutscene, because a queue that said it was going to take 30 minutes popped 5 minutes into it. For one of the Alex normals, because I still needed to get my drop, and it was during, I think it was actually during the cutscene talking about what was going on with Ida and them in possibly Alamigo, or wherever the heck they might be. So I missed out on like that cutscene actually, and I was a little bummed about it because I was like, I don't want to miss this queue and stuff. But I want to watch this cutscene, but I don't want. Been waiting. I don't want to have to actually wait 30 minutes if this was what the queue is really going to be. I mean, I kind of get what they're going with, like the story through so far, like reintroducing the Scions to us. Like each one has like their new look and everything. And when we saw like the artwork for Gears of Change, like everyone's like, "Oh look, Minfilia's back!" Ha ha ha. But then we get to that cutscene, and what's going on with her slash Heidelin? It's kind of like dire warning or message that like the power of the crystals, like it's nearly tapped. It's it's spent. That this isn't like, and then like seeing Alphino's like reaction, like this is not how it was supposed to be. Like he was like upset, and then Matoya was like telling him that this is like how, like, your resolve needs to be stronger than this. Like people die in war. Like you have to be ready to give up your life if you're fighting for this cause. But still, you could see like that, like one scene like just right after with Alphino like looking like down and saying like, he just won't accept it. Like he had this plan in his head of all the Scions being rescued, reunited together, and being stronger than ever, having this grand reunion, especially with Minfilia, and just seeing him, and I guess like the rest of them, they are all each having like a kind of a hard time accepting that.
My favorite was Thancred's reaction. He was just like, like he couldn't accept it.
He was like, his speech to, oh gosh, the what's his face, Hortense brother, the older one, when he's talking about like loss and stuff, and like, you don't know anything, like I fought and like lost people precious, then the punch comes out. It's like,
I was like,
I have
wow,
time to deal with this.
This is getting serious right here.
Like, they're obviously like all like suffering because they all thought that what they were doing, like they always thought that they would get back together, and now Heidelin has another plan, at least for Minfilia. So
you bring up that cutscene where that goes down, and it's kind of interesting because they do kind of infer some sort of emotional response from the Warrior of Light, your character, in that cutscene, and it's kind of something people had been wondering about at some point, like, why would my character stand aside and not emote at all during this? And so I think they've started to push more emotion on this Warrior of Light avatar, and it's been interesting to see. I mean, there's actually a lot more dialogue boxes now, where you'll be able to basically influence the next couple dialogue sessions.
Yeah, I noticed that, especially in this new patch, a lot of the dialogue options, I feel like they really understand what the players have been going through and what they're thinking, so they've kind of projected that onto some of the dialogue options.
I also think it's, as much as some of these games, like especially in an MMO, like you've crafted your character, and the character is kind of your own. Like they still have a story to tell, and like you need to be a part of it. And if they want scenes to be emotional, like your character has to kind of, be involved in that as well. They can't just be on the sidelines, like emotionless. It doesn't work. Some of these scenes, like if that's how it is. I guess I could like equate it to like in like Zelda games. Like Link is supposed to be who you want him to be, but appearance-wise, he looks the same. But, they also give him emotional expressions for scenes so that they play out the way the writers wanted it to play out, to evoke that emotion in the player. So the faces will show they're upset, they're happy, or excited, which you might be like, hey, no, this is my character. I should be able to have influence over how my character feels. But at the same time, they have a script they need to follow, and it needs to be executed. So I guess it's kind of that balancing act of how much authority the player has in terms of influencing the story versus the script that they want to follow to deliver like a well-crafted story. And like the more player input through the dialogue bubble choices, I think that was kind of their way of compromising a little bit more, is that you could actually give how you feel about a situation. Maybe that's how like your NPC or player character will react in the scene but at the same time, like they have their limitations. Like you have to react a certain way in some situations, otherwise just completely pulls you out of the scene and isn't believable.
Yeah, totally. There's probably a fine balance there, by, sort of interpreting an action of someone during the main story. Like maybe someone would think entirely differently during a scene, and so that might pull them out of the moment because we kind of project our own personalities onto these characters, and how would we react in this cutscene? And it's kind of interesting to think that they're starting to give the Warrior of Light more of a presence in that story beyond smiling and nodding.
And so, automatically agreeing.
Right, exactly. So, other story events in this patch, we had the return of a certain character.
Oh, when Estinian showed up, I was like, this guy. I mean, I was waiting for him to show up, but when he did so in a way that was actually kind of shocking. And at first, I thought that he killed that dragon, and luckily that didn't happen. But it was definitely surprising.
Yeah, it kind of caught me off guard because I had still kind of been reeling from the optimism of it all, and I was like, oh, this is how it's going to end. This is like the building of the trust of the
right.
The two
I thought
factions.
It was going to be this happy moment, and then all of a sudden it takes a turn, and you're like, oh well.
Oh boy, it takes a real bad turn, and I guess the angle on this I really appreciate is that the portrayal of the people of Ishgard isn't so black and white. Like, they've been lied to for 1,000 years, and you can see people take it in a certain way. Some people, they see this unrest and they see this destruction of their society coming, and why should we trust all of a sudden this usurper Emmerich over Thoradin and the line of kings that have ruled for hundreds of years? And even though it's a lie, this is our society, this is our culture, we have to protect it in a way. And it is a two-sided affair. Like, there are dragons that have killed many people, and patch 3.2 really does illustrate that even more, that these people can't just let it go, and that there's going to be strife for generations possibly before any peace. And so it's going to be interesting to see it. And you had commented on Alfino earlier, and it's kind of interesting to see him be very young and idealistic, naive, and gradually start to understand this is the truth of the world, and understanding what means you need to fulfill to achieve this objective is his biggest struggle. And I feel that he's definitely a good kind of, I don't want to say foil, but a good companion for the Warrior of Light, because I feel that Alfino is sort of like the person who is trying to essentially make all the right decisions, but he doesn't have the luxury of the Warrior of Light where, he can just kind of be the tool to get things done.
And some of the decisions he's made, he thought that he was making them with good intentions, and they turned around and stabbed him in the back. So he's still learning that not everything is black and white.
So we had a side scenario, the return of another long forgotten character, but we should never forget him though.
He should not be forgotten.
So the Inspector made a return, and it was a little bit shorter this time.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting a little bit more, but I can understand that they probably just kind of snuck him in there maybe last minute or so they just kind of gave fans a little taste for now. Just sort of put the groundwork in there for something later, but it's good to see that he has finally returned.
Mike, did you have a chance to check out the Hildebrand questline?
Yeah, I did. I thought it was a bit on the short side as well, but I kind of just expected that for this patch they wanted to focus a little bit more on the main story quest a little bit more, because 3.1's main story quest felt a little bit thin.
Yeah.
Compared to this one. Like, they're not very long, well, either of them, but this one felt like it had a little bit more to it. There's probably just the beats in the story. Like, this one had more interesting things to cover, probably. So at the same time, I don't think they wanted, with the amount of stuff they threw into 3.2 in general, I think throwing too much of Hildebrand right now might have been like a little bit overboard, especially if they have a lot for it. Like, why not say, like, maybe if they know 3.3 and 3.4 and 3.5 might, one of them might be a little bit weaker story-wise, they might want to save a more meatier Hildebrand arc, especially one that might have like a trial accompanied with it that you know, fans could kind of, you know, look forward to, instead of throwing it all in now when they have so much other stuff that's kind of like stealing the spotlight, like scenario type, like trial type stuff. Like the main story quest this time had that really weird battle thing going on, like the point, like the first to 100 points, or the first to lose 100, whatever it was, and like
the melee or whatever it was.
Yeah,
the grand
like,
melee.
yeah, like they had that going on for it. I was like, "What is this?" And I remember I was streaming that, and people are like, "I don't even know what I'm." Like, the comments were like, "I don't know what I'm watching anymore. Is this an MMO? Like, what are you doing in here? Why is there this big scale battle? Like, how is this working?" And that was kind of like a nice like addition to throw in there. Even though if you were pretty well geared, it was kind of like a joke. But then again, main story question to be.
There's a scene in there where you're facing Raban, and I think that was kind of deceptive in the trailers. It made it look like he was going to be some sort of antagonist character, and you'd have to fight him for real. But when I got there and I saw him, and I was like, oh, well, this is just, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't help but smile at that entire sequence, because, I don't know, it felt very Final Fantasy-ish to me to do something like this, like through that main scenario. And so, I don't know, it caught me off guard in a very good way. So, that was pretty cool. So yeah, Hildebrand ended up being a little bit shorter than usual, but I think short but sweet is a good way to put it. I mean, it was pretty funny.
It was funny, and the little Final Fantasy IX reference was hilarious.
You know, it's kind of cheeky in a way, because it's like, oh hey, here's this reference, but they kind of mess it up in a way. That's kind of... It's a very Hildebrand humor kind of a thing, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of cheeky and...
It's kind of like how they kept calling Gilgamesh Greg.
Right, exactly. It's like, oh man, here is this Final Fantasy legend icon throwback thing. Oh, we're just gonna mess his name up, just for the hell of it. So, yeah, Hildebrand, you know, I hope there's more definitely in the future. And, you know, if they have to keep it on the leaner side, that's fine too. Just a couple of patches ago, it was an intermediary patch, we got the story with the St. Endelum Scholasticate, which was kind of like a sub-story in Ishgard, and that was kind of a different thing. It wasn't a comedic thing, but it was definitely kind of an interesting side scenario that I think that they're going to try to keep going. And lengthwise, they're about the same, it feels. So,
yeah, I could definitely see them maybe alternating between that and maybe Hildebrand every other patch or so.
They do manage to sneak an NPC from the Hildebrand questline into the Scholastica one, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes too. Maybe they'll overlap at some point, who knows. So I'm going to go ahead and segue all over to kind of the instance content, and I want to first talk about the Containment Bay S1T7 where you fight Sephiroth. Now, I don't know how many people tweeted me about that this is not Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. And
oh my gosh.
So, yeah, to put a little background on it, Final Fantasy VI, you may have heard of a rare game like that, but...
yeah, who knows about that game?
Right, exactly. So anyway, it was my first Final Fantasy game. It's got a great place in my heart. But yes, the Warring Triad from Final Fantasy VI makes an appearance in Heavensward in this patch, and you fight the first of the three, and this one is named Sephiroth. Now, most people know this guy as Fiend or Doom in like the original translations of 6, but they actually did have names, and the original sketches are done by Tetsuya Nomura. And so he actually named them when he sketched them, and when they ended up in Final Fantasy VI, perhaps for some reason. I can't remember if they're called by their respective names in the original 6, or they're given the translated names, like the Woolseyism names. But it's Sephiroth, Zervan, and Sophia, I believe. Zervan or Zolvan, forgive my English, but something like that. And so we fight the first one, Sephiroth, in this patch, and I assume that the next two will have the other Warring Triad. So what did you guys think of the trial?
I thought it was really fun. I think the normal mode was actually maybe a little too easy. You can definitely clear it even if a bunch of people are knocked off in the second part of the fight. But overall, I thought it was really fun. Just the things that he does, like his mechanics, and the music. The music that they use is, like, when I first heard it, like, just by itself, I was like, oh, you know, okay, it's different. But I think when you listen to that song and you're actually doing the fight, there's a huge difference. Like, I actually like the song more now that I've done the fight, and it's definitely going to be listening to it a lot in the extreme mode when you're learning that fight, because it's a lot harder than I'd say that they let on.
So Mike, I've heard there's a little bit of controversy around this song, and I say controversy in quotation marks. Do you think this song sounds like another certain song, or do you think it's kind of bullshit?
So, like, I gotta be honest, like, when I first played it and I got to that part, the second phase, or the third phase, whatever you want to call it, the transition to when he gets bigger.
I like that.
I was in the link shell. I was typing in a link shell. I couldn't remember the name of it. I was like, holy crap! This is a song that I heard in the '90s, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So while I'm playing, I'm trying to Google the lyrics I could remember from the song, and I'm like typing in phrases, and it's like just not coming up. And then finally, like, I typed enough of it into the Google search that it brought up. I was like, oh, When Worlds Collide, Power Man 5000. That's the song I'm thinking of. And so, like, I started typing the link shell. I was like, hey, guys, did everyone hear the Power Man 5000 song in Sephiroth yet? And, like, a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, like, that's totally that song. But I think it's just the beginning of the song. The way they start, and up to a certain point, they sound similar, like, stylistically, but at a certain point, they deviate, and they're no longer, like, I don't feel like there's very much similarity in them. Like, the biggest, I would say, besides, like, the starting, like, how the songs actually start up, like, the first 20 or 30 seconds, it's mostly just the lead singer's, like, tone, like, the whispering style, and, like, his inflection and everything. It kind of is similar to the style of When Worlds Collide, just, like, how he's doing it, but, like, the actual instrumentation and, like, whatever, like, techno noises and the craft or industrial noises they're using, like, it greatly starts to deviate. Like, within a few hours, people did, like, a side-by-side, like, video, like, audio comparison so you could listen to them, and, like, it's around, like, I think the 30 or 35 second mark, they sound pretty similar, and then, like, they just don't sound anything alike anymore. So I think that's natural when you hear some songs. Eventually, something sounds like something else at a part. I can name you probably quite a few songs from games that sound at certain points sound like an actual, like, pop song, or a song that's on, like, a record that existed before it was, like, the game version. I don't necessarily think that's anything bad, but again, you know, we saw what happened afterwards.
Yeah,
Power
unfortunately.
Man. I don't know if it was the individual guy or just, like, Rob Zombie. It's Rob Zombie's younger brother who was the front man for them. I don't know if it was just him or the whole group complaining in general, but I guess they did enough complaining that, like, I don't think their tweet even got that much traction. I think it was just within our own community people were talking about it, but somehow, like, most sites didn't even care about it or didn't even pick up on it until Square Enix issued a response to them. And I think probably they just did it to, like, crush it right then and there. Like, hey, like, this is how Soken crafted these songs, especially this song. He had not heard of he never heard this song until you brought it up. Unfortunately, like, you know, any similarities, like, they're not intentional, and, like, the songs really aren't the same, so he didn't copy you. And, like, I think it's died off. Like, I don't know if I really haven't been following it since, but has the guy, like, did Power Man 5000 say anything afterwards, or is it just like,
Well,
that's the end?
I haven't followed up on it too much lately, but I know that after he had made that initial accusation, he made kind of a follow-up comment, dialing it back, and I don't want to dwell on this too much because it's getting into the realm of hearsay and whatnot. But it definitely has died off. I think people have realized this is kind of a little bit of contention, but it's really, the songs, in my opinion, do not. I mean, yeah, maybe it's, part of me wants to believe that Soken's probably heard this song before, but the way that they're constructed, I feel that it's at least inspired at the very most.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I don't think there was any intent to like willful intent to infringe upon anything. And just within 14 itself, real quick, we have other songs that are have this that no one raised a ruckus about because the creators didn't raise a ruckus. The Good King Moogalmog sounds like This Is Halloween, and you don't see Disney going nuts or Tim or
it's definitely that song.
Danny Elfman going nuts
at the start sounds almost exactly.
Yeah,
it's the melody of the Final Fantasy VI Moogle theme, but it's obviously styled with the instrumentation and the tempo in a way that's supposed to be like This Is Halloween. And to me, that kind of stuff is okay because I feel like, and I had talked about this a little bit before in some of our Free Company conversations. Uematsu kind of kicked this off this way, and that's kind of a lot how a lot of early kind of Japanese game composing was, where they would do kind of a lot of riffs on kind of existing songs, but they would change the melody. Like Mother, for example, has a lot of doo-wop kind of 50s kind of stuff in it, and early Final Fantasy, there's plenty of Final Fantasy's got a vast library of different styles of music that they kind of, I don't want to say imitate, but are inspired from. And I feel that Soken basically kind of continues that tradition that Uematsu started, and many other Japanese composers in the industry. So I mean, something like this, it doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it creates a little bit of drama. But I remember reading, a while ago that it's kind of funny when people discover the Carmina Burana, and they realize, hey, the lyrics from One Winged Angel are in here. Did Uematsu steal the song? And it's no, there's much more creative effort being put into these songs than just basically riffing on them. But as a series as a whole, there are plenty of songs that are perhaps riffs of actual songs in the genre, but I don't want to say riff, but more inspired by the genre that they belong to.
Well, yeah,
and that's basically
all the Primal songs are basically like that in this game, where Soken deliberately modeled them after certain genres.
I think that has a lot to do with, the director, Yoshida. I believe when they were talking once about how they created Leviathan's theme, and that Yoshida had went up to Soken and had a list of songs in mind that he wanted to use kind of as a base as to what this song should sound like, and he came up with a bunch of songs from Metallica and so on, and eventually, the end result sounds similar to Metallica, but it's really not anything like a Metallica song. So I feel that they will use that as a base, and I believe Sakaguchi did the same thing with Uematsu back in the day, but I believe that's kind of the approach that they took to creating music throughout the series. And so, yeah, I mean, they're similar, but they're definitely not the same, and I think I've seen a couple drive-by comments on the YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, when we uploaded a Sephiroth video. It was picked up by Polygon, and basically the comments on it were like, oh yeah, it's such a rip-off, blah blah blah, and it's not really. I think it's a stretch. So, that's enough on that topic. I really want to talk about Alexander now, because that's probably the hallmark content of this patch. Seems like everyone has had a really positive impression of Alexander Midas. And if you don't know, it's the new raid, and it's kind of like the successor to Gordius. But it's structured a little bit differently, and based on feedback, the Savage mode, the harder mode difficulty of it, has been tuned in a different way. So Erren, I guess start us off, like, what's the lowdown on how they changed the philosophy of Midas compared to Gordius?
So, this time, they took feedback from the problems that people had in Gordius, where the fights were honestly tuned a little too high, and people really struggled. And this time, what they've said from the start is they've tuned Midas Savage to be around the final coil level. Now, I don't know if that's entirely true, like, as a whole. Like, I'll definitely say that the first floor was easier than Gordius's first floor. The second one's definitely a little more challenging so far, and we're still working on it, but it's the important part of it, though, is that it's fun, and I had a really hard time having fun in Gordius, to be honest. The biggest difference, though, is they focused more on putting in more mechanics that people have to do. So in Gordius, it was all about the DPS checks and also mechanics. But this time I feel like they put in more mechanics and then loosen the DPS checks. So people don't have to worry about doing both. They can just worry about mechanics over DPS, and then once they've learned the mechanics, then they can focus on the DPS part of it.
So Mike, would you say that you'd probably liken it more to like the philosophy of how the Binding Coil Bahamut was set up?
Like the entirety of Binding and Coil, it just turns 1 through 5 prop.
Do you feel that like the focus on more mechanics rather than gear this time? Do you feel that that was similar to how Binding Coil was set up? That's kind of my impression, but do you feel that Gordius was... Do you think the anxiety there was because people were having to wait for, weekly lockouts to get better gear to progress, and that it was that kind of a thing rather than actual mechanics to usurp or to overcome?
I mean, from what I've experienced, so in in full disclosure, I only started raiding with turn 5, and that was after it was on Echo. I did turn 4 when it was still relevant, turn 1, 2, 3, and 4, but turn 5 was obviously the first real suffering. I mean, you could say turn 4 kind of was, but turn 5 was the first.
Oh, we know.
Turn 5 was the first instance of night and day between what you had experienced before until Titan Extreme came along. I think turn 5 was there's nothing in the game like this. What the hell is this? That being said, I do feel most of Coil in general was reliant on doing mechanics right, versus you need better gear. The better gear did help, and you did see a lot more groups clearing stuff once they got further into the gear cycle, or the patch cycle, and had better gear. But a lot of groups that were struggling in Gordius with the later turns were the same groups that were able to clear any of the content before in Coil, and it was because Coil was more mechanics heavy and more lenient on the DPS check. I would actually say that once you saw the whole fight, you would see Enrage a few times, but except for a very limited number of groups on each server, the DPS checks on any of the Coil fights weren't really anything that you couldn't overcome with even, sub not maxed out level gear. So it definitely was more mechanics heavy. Obviously, second Coil was a little more unforgiving originally in terms of insta wipes than any of the other Coil turns, in that one person could completely ruin, one mistake by one person completely ruin the entire thing. But so far from what I'm seeing in Midas, it's that's not the same. They're very recoverable fights so far, in that you can have people screw up something and it's not the end, and because the DPS check is lenient, that helps it become more recoverable. I've heard about a bunch of groups, especially on the first one, on A5 Savage, a lot of groups are having people die a lot on their first clear, but they're still not even seeing the Enrage when they clear. They might have seen it before when they were learning it, and they took a while to get to that part, so they're behind, but once they knew the mechanics, even when people are dying, when they got back up and they resumed what they were doing, because DPS check was so lenient, they're still able to clear without that much difficulty. So if that's how it's going to be throughout the rest of it, that's great. But from what I've seen so far, it definitely gets more mechanics heavy. So we'll see how people respond to that, because truth be told, Gordius had a little bit of A3 Savage was a little bit of both actually. It had a very strict DPS check, which was like hurting people early on the Hand of Pain DPS check, but the rest of the fight was very mechanics heavy. So it'll be interesting to see if anything beyond 6, like the groups have obviously cleared 7 now and are on 8, but like the full guides and stuff for like 7, and there's not really much out about 8. We don't know really the intricate inner workings of the mechanics necessarily just yet, like all of them. So it remains to be seen like how mechanics heavy they really are, and if more groups can handle those, if that was really the issue. So it's definitely
I will add though that I think at least starting from A3 Savage, one of the big things was how unforgiving it was, and just one person making one mistake would probably be a wipe. And it was actually the same in A4 Savage as well. Like if the boss got a stack because you messed up a mechanic, it's pretty much a wipe. So I think that was like one of the big things that people got frustrated over.
Yeah.
So,
both those.
I'm curious. I know we only have the normal mode to go off of, but so Midas 1, 2, 3, or 4, or we can call them what, A5, 6, 7, or 8. I know there's a certain someone who would rather we say them a different way, but which floor do you guys think would be, at least maybe like design-wise, the look of it? Which do you think is your favorite so far? I'd have to say A7 for me.
A7 is cool, but I really like the fourth turn, Alexander 8.
I do laugh at A5 because it's a giant Mario Party level. Essentially,
I never thought of it that way, but you are definitely right.
It's like that's I see a few people running around calling it the Mario Party raid, especially the Savage version with the 4 different things. It's kind of interesting. I was surprised they did that. It was definitely the most different, I feel, mechanics-wise of anything we've seen. They're all kind of different. Like
I actually like that though.
Yeah, like 5. Yeah, 5 has like the animal thing. You transform into animals that deal with mechanics, or go invisible. 6 has it's just a string of 4 different bosses that you have to beat in order, which it's weird. Like everyone's like, is this just the trash or is this the boss like the first time?
No, it's like a gauntlet.
Yeah, it's kind of like we haven't had that before. And 7
we sort of had like turn 2, but not like that.
Yeah, like okay, yeah, I guess turn 2 is kind of like it. It's been so long, but I guess how it was presented, it was linear. You were like, at least turn 2 you could pick paths. So you were like, is this, like the first time I was like, is this how it's going to be? Like, oh no, there's a little bit more to it. And then like, yeah, like the turn 7, the presentation, like the whole going into that city area, like coming from above, like the whole, felt like the Final Fantasy X cutscene where Tidus is riding the chain from the airship to crash Yuna's wedding, or that scene. That it felt like that a little bit, but like the mechanics in it, like being thrown into jail and stuff, and these giant bowling balls, and a cat summoning a heart thing, and I don't know, like, but and then having another god.
I really hate those bowling ball things. So
it reminds me of a huge pinball machine, honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of it's definitely different. And then yeah, you have the final one.
The final one is so awesome. It
pokes fun. It pokes fun a little bit, and at least the normal one pokes fun at the beginning of anyone who did A4 Savage.
Oh, I was when I saw the cutscene, my character's face when he saw the oppressor, he was like, "Really? Like again?
Like
I have to deal with this again?"
I remember when we saw the pentacles come up. We were like, "Oh no, this they can't be doing it." So someone ran into them, like, "Well, let's just try sacking again." Like, maybe that's how
I ran into mine as well, and I was like, "Oh, well, we actually DPS them this time, so I guess that's like, kind of cool."
Yeah, 1, you could kill them, and 2, nope, like that causes damage. So that's one way you could have it implemented a method to safeguard against people using the sack strategy. And then the transformation at the end, and then the music, I was like, okay. I was like, they had they obviously had a lot to work with to poke fun at what was going on in it. But I think, what was the joke? Real quick before I forget, on A5, Tony and Erren, the Foss part. I mean, that was pretty funny how you have double Foss. You're like, oh, it's two of them. Then it turns into Hummelfoss. It's like, oh, what the hell is this? But against the back wall, it looks like there's all these... We thought they were notes, and like I told the group, I was like, oh, those are all Reddit posts of people complaining about Foss on week 1, and they just post them. And apparently I went back like earlier this week when I went in again with some people. Someone was repeating that back like it was truth. I was like,
Wow.
no. Like we looked at them like, those are just weird like drawings. Like, I don't know if that has now spread around to anyone that those are actually Reddit posts complaining, but they're not. So don't spread that rumor. But like they had a lot of fun like with some of the tropes from Gordius. Like they're clearly poking fun at it. For like week 1, like the first few days, people were like double Foss. Oh my god, this is too hard to DPS check. I need to go get my Sephiroth. It was like the same type of complaints for a few days when everyone got 220 weapons. They're like, okay, it's not that hard once you have some gear. But it's overall it's fun, but at the same time, like it's now going to be, as you said, it's almost been 2 weeks. No one has cleared A8 Savage. This might be a case for why you should say M8, because when we get to that one, it's kind of
M4.
Or M4, sorry. But yeah, Alexander Midas Turn 4 Savage has not been completed yet, although some cool photos came out today if you want spoilers. Or yesterday, I don't remember.
I did see them. Is that the Enrage?
No.
Is
No.
that something
So
else?
what happens is, in spoilers I guess, is around like 11 minutes, like after you kill Brute Justice, he transforms into like this final form that has 1.8 million HP or something like that. So I guess in theory you have 2 to 3 minutes to kill that.
Oh man, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, I mean it looks really awesome, but I can imagine like in the current gear level it might be almost impossible to kill.
That's kind of like how I feel right now. I feel because that's one thing I don't know if we've explained yet, and I hope everyone's aware of, is that the gear gap this time, they expanded it a little bit more. Like we have 10 higher eye levels to go than the usual odd or even number patch. Usually it's gone up after the first main patch, and then the 1.1, like in 2.2, like we were like I-90, and they raised it to the max was I-10, and in 2.4 the max became I-30. This time, like we went in, we were 210. Instead of just going from 210 to 230, there's 240 gear now. So they added an extra 10 eye levels, which is their argument, I believe, to balance how they could tune Midas Normal, Midas Savage, and Sephiroth, like how they were able to make them feel a little bit more fair, is that there's a wider gear gap between them now. So I wonder if it really is that they're not tuned too hard, honestly, when you have the appropriate gear. It's just that everyone trying to do this stuff is so low level right now, even with crafted stuff, that honestly, like the later stuff is meant to be done like in 230 gear or higher.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
even with full crafted, you're still like 220 right now, maybe 221.
I imagine that in 0.5, that's when we're going to see our new relic step too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they make that, honestly. If it'll end up being... It'll never be the max level again, it sounds like. Or at least for this remainder of Heaven's Ward, they're going to stick with the Alexander drop being the highest one, and then the relic will be the equivalent of the upgraded Gobdip Tombstone weapon.
Which I think honestly is fair, because like with A4S, people had to put in a lot of work to get those Gordian weapons.
And like this time around, how they're doing it is that you can get the 230 weapon now, the lore weapon, the base one, by doing 7 weeks of Alexander normal, clearing 8 Alexander Midas for normal for 7 weeks, I believe, and then you need like like a certain amount of lore saved up. Like it's either 1,300 or 1,000. You need to
Yeah,
buy the tokens from Rowena or whatever they are, or whoever that person is.
Yeah, and then they also A6 Savage drops that
Yes.
zone as well, and then A7 Savage drops the upgrade item for the weapon. So they've actually gone back to second and final coil structure with that, which is honestly, I don't know why they got rid of that for the last tier, but
Yeah, that was a little strange. I mean, I guess it's better to test it then and get the feedback and fix it now. Like, they probably will never go back to that. So I guess that's good, but it's the same.
They also made the Midas weapons, like, the absolute best, which I also like.
So yeah, that reward's there at the end for people who finish it. You still get the best thing. So, but I mean, very early on, like, you know, if you're still struggling, I think a lot of groups eventually, once they get a little bit more geared up, will be able to handle A6 Savage. Like, I don't think you'll be like, I don't think you need the upgraded weapons to handle that. I don't know anything about A7 or 8.8 or 8.8, but it sounds like probably, especially for the last one, you're probably getting those weapons are going to make a big difference. Like, I think that might be the hurdle for a lot of groups, is just getting that up, like a more powerful weapon than the Sephiroth weapon. But at the same time, like, again, everything I've seen just reinforces, like, it's very mechanics heavy. Like, none of the DPS stuff I've seen so far has been, like, as long as everyone's alive and doing things correctly, like, nothing's even remotely challenging. And we're in pretty, like, we're all around, like, probably 220-ish right now. So there's still 20 more eye levels we could go up.
Right,
and we're doing fine.
Like, A5S I thought was, like, even easier than A1S. We probably cleared within 3 lockouts in my static, which, you know, is honestly nothing. And I wish we would have gone in earlier, but we couldn't due to scheduling. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot more lenient than what we saw last year.
So, I'm kind of curious now because, you know, if Alexander Midas Savage, you know, has less to conquer as far as, you know, meeting strict DPS checks, and it's more of mastering mechanics. We know that the more time you put into it, you know, the more you learn the dance, the more you can clear it. So do you think that we could possibly be in a situation again where, you know, the chief complaint isn't so much that, you know, Midas or Gordius was tuned too high, but that, you know, here we are maybe, you know, a week after 3.3 and people are, you know, maybe they have Savage on clear? Do you think, you know, are we kind of in a return to that binding coil era of maybe some of the, you know, mid-core groups having, you know, the highest difficulty rate on farm, you know, maybe a month or two?
I mean, I've certainly been seeing a lot more people raiding lately, a lot more groups forming, a lot more people excited to actually do this tier compared to Gordius. And, you know, a lot of people have already cleared A5S on Ultros, which is really awesome, so hopefully that trend will continue.
Yeah, it's definitely good to hear. I mean, you know, obviously it's going to have some sort of trade-off depending on, you know, what part of the player base, you know, and, you know, what goals they want to achieve together. But I think that for the mid-core, I feel like this patch is definitely a win.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was one of the great things about the Binding Coil, was that it wasn't tuned to the point where it was out of reach for those mid-core people, and that's why so many people were able to have fun and clear it, and they wanted to come back on every week and get their gear. So them going back to that system was the only logical step that they could do after what people said about Gordius.
So I'm going to go ahead and transition to some of the other content that dropped in patch 3.2, and we're going to kind of hit it piece by piece. Since, you know, it's not quite as thought-provoking as the latest raid tier, but the new dungeons, the Anti-Tower and the Lost City of Amdapor Hard. Do you have a favorite one?
I was actually thinking about that earlier, actually, because I got the Lost City in my roulette, but I think I like the Anti-Tower a little more, just because of the music and, you know, it's a little different.
Yeah. The Anti-Tower has definitely got one of my favorite dungeon music pieces so far. It's got a few throwbacks, or a few pop culture references, and the last boss is kind of a throwback. Mike, you know You know what I'm talking about, right? The last boss in Anti-Tower.
I definitely know what you're talking about.
You're something.
Calcabrina.
You're something of a Final Fantasy IV fan, right?
Yeah, I was hoping there was going to be a lot more in Anti-Tower, but just having the Calcabrina there was, I think, good enough. I remember, I've only run each dungeon once, but running Anti-Tower, I did ask people in the FC and in the party, I was like, so is this fight going to be exactly like the Final Fantasy IV version where, like, if you leave one of the dolls alive long enough, like, you can prevent the merging? Like, you kill them in a certain order? And someone FC is like, no, we tried that. Like, it merges. You get the giant creepy doll. Like, you can't prevent that from happening. I was like, aw, man, that would have been a cool throwback if they did that. It's a very visually unique dungeon. Like, they did a very good job on that. Like, I did like how I liked going through it and seeing the different areas. The boss fights were kind of cool, and yes, I do know the other one you're talking about with the throwback to recently departed amazing artist who Square Enix paid tribute to with some nods there. I would say Anti-Tower is definitely the better of the two. I've only played each once again. Lost City was pretty visually amazing the first time I played through it, and the music was amazing. Like most of the dungeons have pretty good music, but Lost City, I just liked hearing it. Like, even though it was kind of a long dungeon back during its time when it was new. But hard mode, I don't know. Like, I wasn't completely sold. I wasn't really blown away or even remotely impressed with it on my first playthrough. I don't know what it was. Like, I don't know if that theme concept was a one-trick pony, or they just what they did to it to try and change it just wasn't enough, or maybe I'm just forgetting something because or don't know it well enough because I only ran it once and something's just going over my head at the moment because I'm forgetting about it. But Anti-Tower stuck out more, so I'm gonna have to lean with that one. But neither one was like. It's been a while since there's been a dungeon that's actually been challenging, and by that I mean when playing through A Realm Reborn, like hitting Aurum Vale or Cutter's Cry in particular. I don't know if it's because we were just not used to playing 14. I mean, it was an MMO, but it was still new. Things are still being figured out. It could just be like if you had a new player go in now with people who are also new. But like at the same time, I've run with some people who have all been new, and if it wasn't for you pointing out stuff, they clearly would be struggling on some of the same spots in those dungeons as like we did back then. But I kind of wish they would just do that. They might make one of them just a little bit harder. Like you might actually wipe a few times to a boss, and like it gives you some resistance. But I think the issue is they like everyone beating them and coming back and wanting to do them over and over again. If they make one too hard and a player has a bad experience with it, it's just going to trickle down and people might not want to do it over and over, and they need these dungeons to last for like 3 months, essentially.
I imagine if they're going to have people do it to meet their weekly cap, and probably also for Relic at some point in the future, that, you know, they're probably going to need to tune it to a certain level of difficulty. But I think that you touched on a really interesting point, and I had talked with Erren about this a couple times before, but, you know, all of us, we've been playing this game for about 2.5 years now, and we've built up kind of a level of experience, you know, with kind of the ins and outs of this game that, you know, not everyone's going to have if they maybe came in maybe 3 months ago. And so I feel like there's definitely kind of that clash sometimes where you feel like, oh, you know, this new person should be able to just see what's going on and figure it out. But, you know, I mean, I don't know how many times I've kind of rolled my eyes during Thornton or Sephiroth when the T13 Mega Flare, what is it, not the Mega Flare, but the icon that you have to stack under.
Oh, the soak mechanic?
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't know. That it's the same against Brute Justice and Alexander A. People don't know how to stack for that.
So yeah, I mean, you know, it all comes with experience, but it's also the topic of like the next piece of 3.2 additions that they added was the Hall of the Novice, and they added a mentor system. So Mike, I noticed that you're the only one of us that has the mentor icon right now, and I thought maybe you'd be best to explain like what this actually is. What's the mentor system and the Hall of the Novice?
Explain what it's supposed to be and kind of what it is.
He just wanted that cool icon next to his name, obviously.
stole my thunder right there. I wanted a Kingdom Hearts crown by my name. So. I was like, cool, I can have a Kingdom Hearts crown, and people can pretend like I'm actually a mentor or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm a Pokemon trainer apparently. Are you a trainer? No. So I mean, it's actually two parts. The mentor system, which I don't know how many people actually on our server are actively using it, like legitimately. It's supposed to be a system where if somebody has a question about something and they see that icon by your name, they are encouraged to come up to you and ask that you're supposed to be, I'm knowledgeable about the game, but also my class. Like, you know, multiple classes, because the requirements to get it are, there's multiple requirements, essentially. Like, you have to have completed like 1,000 instanced content. You have to have like a level 60 job in each of the 3 categories, like melee, tank, and or DPS, melee, DPS, tank, and healing. There's some other stuff as well. Like, you need a certain amount of accommodations. I think 300. There's also 2 tiers. There's like the Disciple of War and Magic one, but then there's also the crafting and gathering one as well, and they each have their set of requirements. But essentially, when you're a new player, they added that a few patches ago. The whole Sprout system, where if you haven't played for 40 hours, you have the Sprout icon, which means you're new. So now they created a mentor system to encourage these players to go ask people with crowns by them if they have any issues. Go talk with them. They can answer questions about how to play your job better, but also how to do stuff in the game if like any kind of online resource isn't really doing it for you. But there's also like a social channel, like a link shell essentially, which you can never get into if you're a mentor because they have a cap on how many can be in there. And everyone wanted a cool Kingdom Hearts icon by their name. So it's always busy, and you get a signal or a message every so often saying, chat's currently full, you can't go into it. But it's really, some people are taking advantage of it, asking honest questions. So some of it's a little bit social. I know there's been some people questioning like the discussions going on in there. Should they keep it social? Should they keep it strictly to question and answers? Like, it's interesting to see how that's playing out. But it's supposed to be an avenue for new players to discuss with veteran players how to do content and get questions answered about doing role-specific stuff and also content-specific stuff as well. And then the other part of it is the training hall, essentially, which takes you through, I believe it's 5 tasks for each of your classes that you have. So I did like the healer ones. They're very basic. It unlocks when you hit level 15, I believe, and it's north of Aleport. I haven't played a new character to that point since they introduced it to see if it naturally leads you there, because when you're 60, nothing specifically tells you to go there because you're already experienced. But it takes you through basic training, essentially, where the guild hests were kind of supposed to have done that for everyone, but these are a little bit more specific. For the healer one, it's very basic. It's like, learn to heal a tank through taking damage. Learn to dodge AoEs while you're healing. Learn to heal multiple people. Like, learn to dodge multiple enemy AoEs while you're healing multiple people. So, it's very rudimentary. I don't know if it's where it needs to be. Like, it doesn't teach anything about DPSing as a healer, which it's a whole other debate, you know.
It does, actually.
It doesn't tell you to go into cleric stance and do DPS, no. I thought.
Yeah, it doesn't like explicitly tell you like to go into a certain stance or like ability specific, but during one of the healer ones, I believe it says, you know, hey, when it's kind of safe, you can weave in some damage here.
Yeah, but like it doesn't. There's no. I don't know if it's enough. Like, it just kind of tells you it's available, but doesn't give you any basic test on it. Like, the very basic thing they should teach you is how to understand switching between the stances, like the timing of it, like understanding when it's safe to DPS on a very basic level. Like, there's no damage going on right now. you're just sitting there. You should maybe go cleric stance and throw up some dots at the very least, because otherwise you're just sitting there doing nothing. And then like, oh shit, damage is incoming, you should stop attacking, go back into leave cleric stance and begin healing again, or doing mitigation if you're scholar, and then like kind of like weaving back and forth between that, but actually like testing that, not just saying you can do that, because regardless of where you sit on that, like only rating people should be focusing on DPS. I guess it's just the whole thing of like downtime and understanding it. Even if you don't want to do it, I think you should be made aware of how it works and have to prove you understand it, how it works, just so in case it's needed you can be able to do that. Like, and again, I'm only speaking from the healer perspective. I haven't done any of the other ones, but again, to me, it's just very basic. It's a nice thing to have. They can obviously expand it in the future as they get more feedback, but at least they have something now for people to do to help teach people and for people to learn on a very basic level if they want to. Like, that didn't really... It sort of existed before, but it wasn't very well explained. As I said, I thought the guild has system was supposed to do that, but yes, it wasn't doing its job. And then I won't go into it. I'll probably let you or Erren go into the third facet of all this, the stone, sea, sky, and the three S's. But like their answer to, oh, there's no DPS meter in this game. How about we give you a targeted training dummy, and you have to kill it within this time. And if you kill it in that time, that means you meet the DPS check for one of these following instances. If you didn't, you need to maybe work on some stuff. So you can go in there with other people, and they can watch you and tell you what you're doing, using probably ACT or something to tell you your DPS is too low. But at the very least, you can see if you meet certain checks. So, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that one, but that's like the third one that's kind of there for all players to utilize.
All this stuff is pretty good to finally add. I'm glad that it's finally in now. I wrote a little bit about this earlier this weekend. I think yesterday I got a post up about the Hall of the Novice, the Beginner's Hall, the mentor system. Part of it's a really good reason why new people should really try the game, and I feel that a lot of that stuff is being able to build and bolster a support network of people, because the game can only go so far in terms of teaching you things without completely holding your hand. I mean, at some point, yeah, you're going to have to read your tooltips to see, what each thing does. And, you are right that, there's a lot of stuff that the Hall of the Novice probably should go into, such as, the healer. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had, like, a white mage I've been tanking with in, like, Duty Roulette that will just pretty much camp out and throw, like, a Cure 2 regen and just kind of hang out while we go through, and it's kind of like, come on, just like throw an arrow or something. But yeah, I definitely feel like the Hall of the Novice could be expanded, but as far as it stands right now, I think it's great that people have a resource now to be able to test this out. And regarding your earlier comment, there are Smith NPCs in each Adventurers Guild in each major city-state, that when you hit level 15 you can actually queue for the lessons, basically. But the actual Hall of the Novice, they direct you there, but you actually have to physically go to Aleport there to actually get more information, although the bulk of the information, from what it seems, is to be, it's contained in those instanced lessons, basically. So, yeah, Stone Sky Sea, people, they've really wanted to probably provide some way to provide this sort of resource, this information, without having people to resort to third-party software. And obviously the reason there is because, they can't guarantee that, third-party software isn't going to corrupt your game, and they don't want to be held liable for it, is my assumption. So, having something like Stone Sky Sea, I haven't used it too much because I haven't been doing too much raiding. I did test it out for making a video on it earlier this week, But as far as the feedback you guys have gotten on it, do you think that it's a useful tool? Like, I know that you're able to test the baseline output of damage, but you know, how useful is that when you're executing so many mechanics at any one given time in like a Savage mode
I mean
raid?
that's like the big thing that I've been thinking about every time that I've tried it, because in most of these new fights you're not going to be just standing there the whole time and, you know, not going to have that ideal situation of just turreting. So I'm not sure if these dummies take that into consideration with their checks, but I feel like it's a decent way to gauge like how well you're doing if you can beat the timer. But in an actual like real fight situation, it's probably completely different.
Yeah, so I mean, we've actually been making a bunch of videos all this week. Erren and I have been putting up videos of all of the patch 3.2 content, and the Beginner's Hall and Stone Sky Sea is all part of that too. So I guess we'll move on to like maybe some of the smaller content pieces. I know that a lot of people were excited to finally get the jukebox, aka the orchestrion. So how does that work? And
So somebody has to craft it. You don't just automatically get one, although you do get one in your inn automatically. But if you want one for your house, it has to be crafted, and you can place it wherever you want in there, which is pretty cool. And so what you have to do is you have to get individual songs, and you use them like you would use an item, and then they show up in your house. And you can pick which one that you want for your to play inside your house. And the music actually, like, it's not like the general BGM that you just hear in one audio level. It kind of reflects on where you are in the house in your speakers.
so I'm understanding this right, that you know the songs that you unlock are just for you yourself, but you know, for like our Free Company estate, there's someone designated that can set a song.
I know in the personal housing, you can actually, like, if you have somebody like attached to your estate, you can give them access to the orchestrion, and they can, you know, mess around with the music that way. So I assume it's similar in the Free Company housing. I haven't actually tried it in an FC house yet.
Yeah, I went in to go check out the orchestrion, and it didn't have any music unlocked, but it was playing several different themes from the game. So I assume that someone has permissions to actually change that. But for each individual person, you have to unlock songs. And how do you get these different songs? I understand some of them you can buy.
Some of them you can buy from various vendors. Like, I know there's some, like at the Wolf's Den vendor, you can spend wolf marks. And some of them you get like as an automatic dungeon drop. So like, I actually got the anti-tower music just randomly dropped in my inventory at the end of the dungeon, which was cool. And some of them you get through primals, or like you can get answers by fighting. You have to do turn 5, turn 9, and 13 to get answers. So that one's a little lengthy.
So how's your progress on that?
Pretty much 0 out of 3 so far. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I guess the only comfort is that I'm pretty sure all three of us have pretty much every Final Fantasy XIV soundtrack. I don't know about Mike, but I have my wind-up Spoony Bard.
Yeah, I need to redeem mine still. It's still in the packaging, but I gotta get around to that.
So I understand that Susan Calloway actually she released a Answers single this week.
Yeah, so she's actually, or people have been bugging her about this for a while, actually. They kind of wanted her to do her own take on Answers because it is such a popular song. And, you know, she kept saying that, oh yeah, you know, maybe I'll do one. And so last week she announced that she would be finally releasing one. And that released a couple days ago now. And I do like it, even though it is a little different. I know some people weren't too happy with it, but after listening to it for a few times, I still think that it's a good companion piece to the original.
Yeah, likewise. So, Mike, have you had any chance to mess around with like the orchestrion at all? Have you been trying to collect music as fervently as you collect your birds and ponies?
I haven't gotten around to like the list. There's like a pretty good Reddit list. I actually have it up now because I was looking for it. It has the conditions for I think either all the songs or all the known songs, or how people know how to get them. And I mean, I've seen several drop in the past week and a half. The only one I have gotten is I got the Ante-Tower drop, so I got that one, and I just either yesterday or today bought one from Mordona for Poetics from what's her face at the Poetics booth, and I have to craft that one still. So luckily I do have an alchemist who can craft the faded versions into the actual songs. But it does seem like a lot of these aren't that bad to get. Like a lot of these you can just buy for 5,000 gil, and a lot of these are some of these are actually crafted that, oh, you need faded copies for these crafted ones. I was reading this wrong, but some of them cost like MGP, some of them cost wolf marks.
Oh, yeah, you can actually get the, you can get Hildebrand's theme from the Gold Saucers.
Yeah, it's like 30,000 MGP, so
yeah.
I'll buy those after I'm very close to hitting my 1 million MGP, so I can buy the Fenrir mount. And there's some that you trade for. Like you have to trade in like 10x amber encased Velikins for some of these. Yeah, there's just a lot of looks like there's 47 listed here, so I'm not sure if there's any more than that or that's all of them. But I'm trying to see if Answers is on. Yeah, Answers is on there. It's 46. So I haven't looked. I don't know if the Orchestrion lists more than 47, but yeah, they're a decent amount of them. Like I would say, maybe looks like 2/3 of them come from drops from instance content. So I'm sure it's going to encourage a lot of people. But also, I don't know if you saw that one Twitter screen or post with a screen cap from the game, but running content synced, especially the harder stuff, yields much better drop results for these music.
Yeah, I saw
sheets.
that they got like
Oh, really?
6 copies of Answers.
6 copies of, yeah. Like, I don't know if that was also minimum eye level or just straight up synced, but
I think it might have been minimum eye level.
Doing stuff as it was intended to do and not like abusing it with unsynced seems to yield more guaranteed results, is what I guess people are saying. Like you'll get at least 1 drop or something.
That's interesting because, I think a lot of people were probably concerned about, the quote-unquote, integrity of the old mechanics and content, and, now here's kind of a little kick in the ass to try to do it, kind of as it was back then.
Oh man, I think the minimum eye level for like turn 5 is 83. So imagine doing that when most people did that fight in full I-90.
What was Darklight? Was that I-90 or was that I-80?
No, that was 80.
Man.
No, Darklight was 70. The first Crystal Tower face was 80.
And then Mythgear was 90. So yeah, Darklight was 70. Oh my gosh.
Jeez, yeah. So I want to take a moment to point out that Idleshire's been kind of upgraded.
Yeah, they added some more buildings. They're kind of expanding it like they did with Mordona, which I think they said they were going to before, but it'll be interesting to see how big it actually gets.
Yeah, they've added quite a few buildings, and I'm kind of wondering, like, what kind of... I'm kind of thinking, what kind of new systems or mechanics would they possibly place in Idleshire, maybe as this kind of base for some kind of new content. And they've only hinted at this a couple of times so far, but it seems like in patch 3.3 there's going to be some sort of new 1 to 4 player content, and we don't know much more than that. And I'm talking about, must have been Famitsu or something like that. So I'm kind of interested to see where that's going to go, and if that'll have kind of a home in Idleshire as this place kind of gradually expands. So, as far as I know, and I may be wrong about this, but we are expecting patch 3.21 sometime soon, Tuesday?
Yeah, I think they were waiting a couple weeks for the PvP, the Feast, to come out, because they wanted people to do the do the raid and things like that.
So, are you ready for esports?
Well, I will say that there already is new PvP gear that's out, and you don't have to have a rank to buy it, which is really awesome.
I'll have to check that out because I totally forgot that exists, and now
Yeah,
I'm abundantly
I
curious.
was checking it out yesterday, and I was like, oh, I don't have to be like rank 45 or whatever to wear this stuff. That's pretty cool.
So, it seems like they're trying to definitely gear this towards people who play more competitively, perhaps even having this as kind of like a standalone. At events they'll have like the primal fights and stuff. Perhaps having some sort of I mean, I could only see this being Japan or FanFest, but having some sort of the Feast tournament, exclusive to maybe some arcades or FanFest locations. Maybe something like Gamescom, or maybe PAX too.
Yeah, I know they had, I think last FanFest they did actually have Frontlines available for people to play, so I could definitely see them doing that again.
So, obviously the Feast, it's going to be, it's back to the Wolves Den, so it's not Frontlines, it's not going to be like huge, 24 on 24 on 24 battles. It's going to be more like, looks like 4v4, 8v8 at the most.
Yeah, it's there's different types, but like the main one's gonna be 8v8, though there is a 4v4 one, and the arenas are a little bit, from the videos, are a little bit bigger than Wolf's Den, but obviously not as big as any of the frontline maps. So like they do have that, I don't know if you want to call it famous or iconic Wolf's Den circle part with the walls and the columns, but there are definitely like different like raised platform parts beyond that. So there's verticality to the level. Like I was kind of worried that was gonna be just straight up Wolves Den like format, like very flat, maybe some structures to break line of sight. Honestly, like some people find it appealing. I kind of like a little bit more diversity to the maps, so that was kind of reassuring. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like the preseason starts supposedly Tuesday when the patch is 3.21 drops, and then there's a few weeks of that, and then all those results get reset, and the actual season starts on 2.5 or
2.35, I think. Yeah.
3.25.
3.25. Sorry.
yeah, we both got it wrong. We got it right in the end, though. It'll be interesting to see. Like a lot of people are like practicing Wolves Den now, in the, at least on the Ultros PvP link shell. That those who are still serious about it, like a lot of them are doing Wolves Den every day to kind of get back into that mindset, because Frontline and Wolves Den are very different mentalities. Like you can be decent at Frontline, but if you try and go into Wolves Den and think you're okay and you've never really played Wolves Den, you'll get obliterated, especially if you're a healer. Healing is like the hardest thing to do in Wolves Den. But again, people are practicing it, getting ready for it, but the video and the explanation they gave about how things are to work in the Feast has me a little bit worried. Especially, I think people thought like the coin system, you just walk over a fallen opponent's body or their coin drop, you just walk over and it picks it up automatically. But they said in whatever the interview, the video, like you have to interact with it, like walk up to it and click on it and do the stupid interact. So if that might have been a mistranslation, like until we see it in action, like seeing someone doing it, and if we see a bar, if that's how it is, that's gonna suck. Like you're gonna be vulnerable, and like they even said like there's like an incentive to like I think it is that way because they want you to like defend like people's like currency and stuff. Like after so much time, it'll vanish and go back to the player. So if you strategically die, if you're to die, you should probably run back to your group as fast as possible and get as close to them, because then they could guard your corpse essentially until you, I don't know if you could respawn and they could get it or something, but like they can fend off people from stealing your currency. It sounds like it's going to be one of the strategies they want. But then there's the whole thing about like there's the equivalent of a perk system where you kill enough people you get bonuses, but at the same time, if people haven't died for X amount of period, like something called the culling period activates where people are easier to kill. And actually if you have like a long kill streak, while you might get some benefits, like you're extremely vulnerable. Like it's easier to kill you. Like it's I just don't know if they're gonna get the. I doubt they're gonna get the balance right away. And I'm sure some people will figure it out and take advantage of it, and they'll be the teams that are winning because they know it inside out. But I'm gonna guess it's gonna be a little unfair at first for those who can't figure it out or don't want to take advantage of the imbalances. And I don't know if just tweaking that after season 1 will be enough. Like I don't know if this thing is really gonna take off. Like I think it'll be okay it'll be semi-popular for its first season. I think after that it's going to die off. Like, I think people either get more interested in the other PvE content, especially if they keep up delivering a good amount in each patch, and the right type of content that everyone's looking for, like content for everyone essentially, and or they add new types of PvP content in general, like new Frontlines maps. I was like, well, forget the Feast. We got a new a Frontline map everyone wants to try out, so no time for Feast. And already PvP is ultra niche for like even 14. Like only a very small player pool plays it. Frontline, especially Seas, I think was probably the most popular it got, and then it died off after that. It only got popular for a little while. Like each new one kind of had a resurgency for like a little bit. I think Seas had the longest resurgency and died off the slowest. But right now, like right before this patch, like almost no one was doing PvP. Like in fact, a lot of people in Ultros who still did any kind of PvP moved to another server cluster where the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a few players, like one of the persons behind 14 PvP who was on our server, moved over to Gilgamesh to be in that cluster, but also to get with a group over there because pretty much everyone's convinced that their data cluster is going to be the only competitive scene, aside from maybe one of the Japanese server clusters, and that's going to be it. So the thing that sucks is there's some cool reward gear tied to all that Feast stuff that no one's ever going to get except for those very few people.
Yeah, there's like a airship mount, I think.
Yeah, like I hope that's just tied to like overall winning and stuff, not like your rank, but like just getting a certain amount of wins. Like you could just do as many like the unranked Feast matches or whatever. I hope it's that, because that's gonna suck if you can only get a mount from being ranked, because then that means I have to try.
I think there is one set that the champion gets though, gear wise.
Yes, there is a champion's gear set that they previewed one of them that looked pretty awesome. That's not so bad. That's a very cool reward and a very like fair reward. Like you should be able to show off if you were like the best of your team was the best, or you had the best results as a certain class in that season. Like they definitely should reward you for that. And gear, like superficial gear that like only you can have, that's pretty cool. I guess mounts sort of fit that way, but that kind of sucks for PvE people because so much of the mount system is tied behind PvE. Like only 4 mounts are tied behind PvP, and it's just like general wins. Like you honestly can like no life it. Like you don't have to have any talent to get those. Like, you just have to have enough time to do those.
Yeah.
So having something like that gated behind serious PvP kind of stinks. But I think they'll stick with gear. I think those mounts will just be tied to wins, like the ADS mount and the Warhorse mounts. Like you just gotta win enough, and you can take as much time as you want. Like you could do it a year from now. You could do it 3 months after, a month after it comes out, depending on how much you play.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, how it plays out, to see, how long this will stick, compared to the Wolves Den from last time. I know that I've had a lot more fun doing Frontlines than Wolves Den, and, well, I'm not very good at PvP, but, Seas was probably one of the funner times I've had doing PvP in this game. So, I guess we'll see. They definitely want to do a season, keep that going, and try to keep people interested in PvP. And if that needs to have a bunch of exclusive rewards to get people interested in it, maybe that'll have some interesting results. So I guess what we'll go ahead and do now is kind of move on to maybe any thoughts you guys have of what you're excited for maybe in the next patch, maybe where the rest of the 3.x series is going? Do you feel that they're good doing kind of on the same content floor they are, or do you think that 3.3, you know, what kind of content would you like to see, since we've had lots of different stuff so far. We've had like the diadem in 3.1, which hasn't really stuck around too much. It seems like they want to go back to the drawing board on that. You know, PvP wise, you know, trials wise, do you think that we need to see more mixing up as far as content goes?
I think Diadem was a good idea, but the problem is, like, as soon as they nerfed it, I feel like everybody just abandoned it, and even trying to go back in now and get spoils, because they did nerf the amount that you need to spend to get, like, the level 5 materias and stuff like that, but, like, barely anybody is doing it, so it's not even worth it. So they really, I feel like they needed to sort of incentivize people to go back in there, but more content like in that sort of vein would be more interesting. I know like we should see the next Void Arc-esque thing in the next patch, so I am looking forward to that. Even though
it's a bit easy for us.
Yeah, it is. Well, see, you say that, but I was in a Void Arc the other day, and it was pretty hard.
Oh, I believe it. So, Mike, what are you expecting for the rest of the 3.x series? Like, where do you think that they should go from here on?
I mean, like with the diadem, I really don't know what they can do to that. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna overhaul it in 3.3 to include like 230 gear or something, like, or they're just gonna. It sounds like they might just leave it alone as is, like it just drops obsolete gear. It's mainly for the tokens you want to trade for grade 5 materia, just to make it easier. I kind of sort of hope they would put it back to 230 drops or something, or 230, I don't know, something to make it relevant again other than materia. But I think once you see people hitting more 230, 240 gear, like Diadem's going to pick up again, but it's going to be the easy mode. Everyone just wants to grind through it as fast as possible to get as many drops, regardless of what they are. So it'll stay relevant as long as they offer materia through it, but it's kind of a shame that that's all it's going to become, is a materia grind. Like, they could probably do something else, like adding the drop in Void Arc once a week. I wonder if they're going to either move that drop to the new one only in 3.3, or if completing one of each will give you a token to redeem a grade 5 materia. Like, all of a sudden you can get 2 a week. It'd be interesting to see what they do with that. Obviously, like, I hope they keep up this string of the primals, starting with like, and Bismarck was whatever, but from like Ravana on, they've been fun to learn and clear. Like, they've been pretty good mid-core content. Like, Thornton just came a little bit too late, I think, but it did help for a month.
Yeah.
And you're seeing right now, like, as much people who aren't going into Alexander Savage just yet, like, Midas is doing its job. Like, a lot of people are still trying to do Midas each week, or gonna be, because it's still pretty decently challenging for most people. But also Sephiroth, like, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of learning parties on, like, Ultros, like 8 at a time. Some points you'll see like 8 learning party finders. It's like way more than Thornton had. Like, this is back to like heyday of 2.2 to 4 day, when it was like between 2.2 to 2.5, I guess, in the Realm Reborn. Like, so far up through now, through 2 weeks, like, it seems like there's a lot of content and people feel really good about it. And so they can deliver for those people who might, if we start seeing some people either not responding well to the rest of Alex Savage or Midas Savage in general, I do hope they deliver another primal that's been on par with these other ones, to at least buy another month of some challenging content for those groups who might feel that either 6, 7, and or what looks like 8 could possibly be too much for them. Or at the same time, it also, I hope it drops a relevant weapon. Like, Sephiroth definitely is dropping a relevant weapon, just like Thornton did. Ravana did as well. At the time, Bismarck was kind of like, you could use it for Ravana, but once he cleared Ravana right after, it was like, you don't need Bismarck weapons. So they've had a pretty good string of primals dropping weapons that you actually could use, which is a stark comparison to starting with, like, I think it was Ramu. Oh, well, Leviathan was kind of a disaster with the upgrade. Like, no one could get the upgrade, so it was like, is this really worth it? And then Ramu was pointless day one almost until they fixed the ring eye level to be relevant.
And then Shiva
was
also just a glamour weapon, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much Shiva was like, have you not gotten your relic to 130, or not getting your relic to 130 or 135, or are you never going to get turn 13 cleared? Well, here's a Shiva weapon that you could upgrade to 110 or 20, I thought. Like, after you completed, 10 clears or 5 clears, you got your Diamond Dust, you could upgrade it. So, but I mean, they did take that upgrade system and turn it into the token system to redeem, which has been good so far. Like, 10 clears, you get your shit, even if you had bad RNG. Yeah, a Primal would be nice. More Hildebrand, like, I hope we get Hildebrand with some either new villain to be part of the trial series for that, because that's always fun content. Think of all the trials we got from A Realm Reborn Hildebrand. Like, we're so behind on that. Like, they need, that would be nice to have some more trial instance content that might not be EX Primal difficult, but still, you know, like, story, like 8 hard mode level, I would say.
Right.
That's a nice area to get that from.
Yeah, I'd like to see something like in the vein of Ultros or Gilgamesh. Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, because we got 2 Gilgamesh and Ultros battle from that. We got 3 instance battles from those. And again, those are all optional. Like, you could totally miss those. Like, I had a friend who started playing through this game, and he is almost done. He took a break. He's coming back in a week, and he's right on the edge of hitting 60 and finishing Heavensward. But he has not touched the Hildebrand stuff yet. I'm like, dude, you're missing, like, the Gilgamesh and Ultros battles. Like, you need to see those, because you're a huge fan of, like, old school Final Fantasy. Like, you need to see these. So you can miss out on those so easily, but it's nice optional content for people who want to do it.
No, I've been making some interesting guesses about maybe what some of the optional bosses, the throwback bosses, could be for kind of like the Hildebrand saga. And I was tossing around, you know, after watching the 3.2 Hildebrand storyline, I was like, a little Black Mage Mammoth, what if they had like a Black Waltz from Final Fantasy IX? Or maybe they could have something, and we've known that they've hinted this before, but I'm still excited to maybe see possibly Doom Train? Because if any of y'all have participated in that Developers Room event that they had for the 2nd year anniversary, they did kind of drop that hint, so I'd be really excited to see, you know, that come back. It'd be pretty interesting to see how they'd implement that in Final Fantasy XIV's trials of all things, but we'll see. So I guess what we'll go ahead and do is wrap it up. Thanks again, Erren and Mike, for joining me today to do another episode. Seems like you guys have had really positive impressions of patch 3.2, so that's good to hear. I really love the patch so far.
Oh, definitely.
So if you guys want to see more patch 3.2 content, Erren and I have been putting up content all week on YouTube every night, and I've been badgering her every night for Alexander, so I'm gonna try to calm down a bit. But
no, it's good. It's awesome. So don't worry about it.
I'm really excited for them to see A7 and A8. So
yeah, 7
cool.
is really awesome, and 8 is just, it blew my mind. So I think pretty much everybody's had that kind of reaction toward it.
So we'll definitely get that up for you soon. You can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com, and we're at novacrystallis.com, so we add the .com after that. So other than that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll be back later this month. We hear that there's some sort of Final Fantasy XV event coming up on the horizon. We might have a few comments for that, so please look forward to that. Thanks again, guys. Have a good one.